Good to go?
Good to go. You can begin.
Okay, great. So, hi everyone. My name is Nyla Modest. I'm here with my group members, Clacia DeLeon and Josiah Christopher. And today we will be discussing chapter 12, coming from the Daft Power and Influence. So, before we get into the chapter, I want you all to pay attention to these three key terms that you're going to keep seeing throughout the presentation, but I want you all to get a proper understanding of these three terms. So, first off, we have power. This is the ability of one person or department in any organization to influence other people to bring about desired outcomes. Then we have influence. This is the effect a person's actions have on the attitudes, values, beliefs, or actions of others. And lastly, we have leadership. This is a practical skill, compasses the ability of an individual, group, or organization to lead, influence, or guide other individuals, teams, or entire organizations. So now we're going to get into the chapter. So within the chapter, we're going to be looking at the power and influence of leaders. So this chapter discusses the different types of sources of power, including charismatic and transformational leadership styles, and it examines how leaders exercise their power and influence through political activity. And we'd also briefly touch on the ethical considerations when using power and influence. So, we're going to move right ahead into transformational and charismatic leadership. But before we dive into that, right, we have to get a proper understanding of transformational leadership, and we have to compare it to transactional leadership. So, first up, what is transformational leadership? So, this can be defined as a transaction or exchange process between leaders and followers, while transformational leadership focuses on intangible qualities such as vision, shared values, and ideas in order to bring about significant change in both followers and the organization. Transformational leadership has a positive impact on follower development and performance, and transformational leadership skills can be learned. Additionally, some personality traits may take it easier for a leader to display transformational leadership behaviors. Moving on to the next slide. So now we're going to see how it differs from transactional leadership. So transactional leadership has four significant areas. So I'm just going to go through them with you, and I want you all to pay close attention to each one, right? So first up, we have transformational leadership develops followers into leaders. Now, followers are given more ability to control their behavior within boundaries set by the leader. The leader inspires and mobilizes followers around a shared mission and vision and helps them see things in new ways, encouraging productive change. The transformational leader raises awareness of problems and issues and encourages followers to work towards achieving organizational goals while allowing them to operate within relative freedom. So the second one we have is transformational leadership elevates the concerns of followers from lower level physical needs. Lower level physical needs would be like things like safety and security, and moving them to higher level psychological needs. This would be like self-esteem or self-actualization. So meeting the lower level needs of employees such as wages and safe working conditions, is important. But however, transformational leaders also focus on the growth and development of individuals to elevate their needs and abilities to a higher level, aligning them with the organization's missions. The goal is to empower followers to change the organization, and transformational leaders set examples and assign tasks accordingly. Then we have the third one. Transformational leadership inspires followers to go beyond their own self-interest for the good of the group. They make followers aware of the importance of change and enable them to surpass their own expectations. The relationship between the leader and the follower is built on admiration, identification, and trust. However, the focus of transformational leadership is not just on the leader, but on the need for change and willingness of followers to make personal sacrifices for the greater good. And then the fourth one, we have transformational leadership paints a vision of a desired future state and communicates it in a way that makes the pain of change worth the effect. So the key role of a transformational leader is to create and communicate a compelling vision for the organization that motivates followers to take action and work towards a common goal. And without a vision, there's no transformation, and it is the vision that forms the basis for other aspects of transformational leadership. Um, the leader must enlist others in sharing the dream and provide a sense of purpose for the organization to achieve meaningful change. So we're going to move on to the next slide. Transactional leaders promote stability, whilst transformational leaders create significant change in followers as well as in organizations. Leaders can learn to be transformational as well as transactional. Effective leaders exhibit both transactional and transformational leadership patterns. They accentuate not only their abilities to build a vision, empower, and energize others, but also the transactional skills of designing structures, control set systems, and reward systems can help people achieve the vision. So while we learned all of this, right, which leadership style would you all say that you'll resonate more with? Like, would it be a transactional leader or transformational leader? Like, which one do you all feel a lot more um with? Okay, if y'all if y'all don't, that's okay. Y'all could
Hear me?
listen again. What's that?
You hear me?
Yeah.
Um, probably transformational.
Okay.
Transformational.
Okay, that's fine. So
Yeah, same for me.
okay, no problem. So we're gonna move on to the charismatic leadership now. So charismatic leadership is different from transformational leadership, as it often inspires awe and submission in followers instead of engagement. So these leaders have an emotional impact on people, appealing to both heart and mind. Charisma can lift the entire organization's level of performance when used wisely and ethically. And leaders who pursue activities they have a true passion for can become charismatic. While charisma itself can't be learned, aspects of charismatic leadership can be used by anyone. Passionate leaders can inspire and motivate people to transcend their own interests for the sake of the team, department, or organization. Moving on to the next slide. So, since we learned everything, the main parts of a charismatic leader, so like, what are the qualities that these leaders possess? They're able to create change by inspiring followers with a vision of a better future, and they communicate complex ideas in a way that everyone can understand and identify with. They often act in an unconventional way to transcend the status quo, and their willingness to take personal risks enhances their emotional appeal to followers. Charismatic leaders derive their influence from personal characteristics rather than a formal position of authority, making their leadership transcend formal organizational positions. So, since we learned about the transformational, transactional, do you all think that you all can describe yourself as a charismatic leader instead?
Well, as I said
I'll say
before,
so.
I'm both like charismatic and transformational because I like to persuade people and you champ.
Okay. Okay. Oh, good. Okay. That's good that you can see yourself as both. So we're gonna move on to the next slide. Um, a key characteristics of both charismatic and transformational leadership is that they are based largely on the strength of the leader's personal power rather than on a position of authority granted by an organization. Moving on to the next slide. So now, if you all remember what we learned at the beginning, right? We learned the three key terms, which were power, influence, and leadership. So I just want to elaborate a little bit more on them and let you know how they coexist. So, power. So, power gives you the potential to influence others within the organization to attain goals or outcomes for power holders. Power is realized through the processes of politics and influence, whereas influence is the effect of a person's actions. What they have on the actions have on the attitudes, values, beliefs, or actions of others. Power and influence result from the interaction of leaders and followers in specific situations. Leaders can improve their effectiveness by understanding the various types and sources of power as well as the influence tactics they have they or their followers may use. So now we're going to move on to the 5 types of leader power.
Hi everyone, I'm Felicia and I'll be taking you through this part of our presentation. So we have the 5 types of leader power. So how effective an employee is at work can be determined by the source of power their leader possesses. Therefore, we must understand the different types of power to know which ones will provide the most beneficial and positive outcomes. So let's all take a look at this little diagram here. So the circle on the left, it illustrates the first 3 types of power, which are legitimate, reward, and coercive power. So these are all considered types of position power. While the circle on the right represents the other 2 types of power, which are expert and referent power. So these 2 are considered to be types of personal power. So before we jump in to the 5 types, we must understand what position power and personal power are. So position power, well, it's also known as formal power. So this refers to the authority one has in an organization's hierarchy. So let's take, for example, a secondary school in Trinidad and Tobago. So at the top of the organizational structure, we all know that the head is the principal and then the vice principal, then deans, teachers, administrative staff, and then students. So in contrast to that, personal power refers to your characteristics and abilities to influence other people's behavior. So a leader who uses personal power usually focuses on inspiring or motivating others, as well as developing his or her own interpersonal skills. So that being said, a leader can use possessional power to ensure everyone is working towards the same goal, just for the success of the organization. However, a leader can use his or her personal power to build positive, long-lasting relationships and gain more experience and knowledge on his journey. No one can take away your personal power though, but your positional power, it can be taken away. Therefore, it is really important that you build strong personal characteristics and skills to rely on in case that ever happens. So as we can see that both types of power are beneficial. However, it really depends on how you as a leader will use your positional power. So now we'll discuss in detail the 5 types of power. So the first one is legitimate power. So this type of power comes from having a particular status or rank in an organization. It ensures that employees know what their tasks and objectives are. So for example, subordinates recognize their leader's authority, which is why they will act in accordance or comply. It is also very important to know that you will lose your legitimate power if you lose your position. So take for instance, if you're working at an organization and you are a supervisor, but you got demoted to an entry level position, you will lose your authority that you once had. The second one is reward power. So this type of power refers to receiving rewards for completing tasks or projects given to them by their superiors. So some examples of rewards can include an increased salary, a job promotion, paid vacation, time off from work, and simple compliments from your boss. I know that all of us here would love those things once we start working in our organization or whoever is working in our organization. So using this type of power motivates and it also encourages employees to be more productive and it also promotes teamwork and some healthy competition. The third one is coercive power. So this is one of the most frequently used in many organizations. And it is also the opposite of reward power. It involves using fear, punishment, and threats to get employees to do their job. So coercive power is usually exploited by individuals who have a high rank in a workplace. So they have the authority to fire, criticize, and demote their subordinates. But using this type of power creates an environment of fear and toxicity. It also hinders growth, creativity, and innovation in the organization. Because who would want a boss that is constantly making you feel as if you're going to lose your job? Nobody, right? This will also create a tense, hostile environment, and nobody wants that. But despite the many disadvantages of coercive power, it can be used to manage insubordination. So, for example, a supervisor can use this type of power when an employee is always late for work or he is threatening or bullying and harassing another employee. The fourth one is expert power. So this type of power refers to the knowledge, experience, and skills an individual has in his or her field or area of expertise. As a result, subordinates will trust and respect their superiors' insights because of the knowledge they possess. And in addition to that, a leader can guide his or her employees and help them to grow and develop their interpersonal skills and such. So, for example, medical students, they will follow surgeons because of their credibility and accomplishments, right? However, with expert power, you have to continually gain knowledge in your field. Otherwise, it will lessen and subordinates, they wouldn't trust you and they wouldn't follow you. Another thing is that some expert leaders feel as though they know everything, so they disregard other people's opinion. The last type of power is referent power. So this type occurs when employees admire, respect, and trust you as a leader. So it really focuses on the leader's personal traits instead of their status in the organization. So a leader who uses referent power creates significant, positive, long-lasting, healthy relationships, right? And in addition, they will assist and listen and support their colleagues, right? So expert power is noticeable in charismatic leaders because it is a combination of charm and interpersonal skills. Also persuasiveness to inspire and motivate others, right? Okay, so now I have a question. So if you were someone's supervisor, right, which type of power would you use on your subordinates? Would you use referent power, expert power, coercive power, reward power, or legitimate power?
I think I would use expert power, just to get on everybody's good side, stuff like that. So yeah, I'd use that one.
Okay, thank you. Um, okay, so now we can move on and we'll briefly discuss the ripple effect. So one individual's behavior, as we know, has the power to influence others. Therefore, in order to have a positive impact on the world, you have to demonstrate ethical and productive behavior, right? This type of behavior will help you to gain trust and respect from others. And as a result, you will become a powerful influence. So this is known as the ripple effect. So let's take a look at the picture on our right. I'm sure all of us here has been to the beach as children or even as adults and we tossed a stone into the water. So when this happens, the water will result in a change that can be seen or observed further away from where we tossed it. So with that being said, I mean to say that your small actions has the potential to lead to like bigger and major changes. So for example, everyone here has watched the news before, whether it be local channels like CNC3 and TV6 or international channels like CNN and BBC, right? And for those of us who love Instagram, like myself, have viewed the popular page called the Shade Room. So these all broadcasts important news reports and stories that are going on in the world today, right? So having said that, we've all seen the number of mass shootings and police brutality occurring almost every day in the United States and in the world, right? So when this happens, it takes just one person to influence someone else to fight for change in their country. And when that happens, they in turn influence their friends and family who we see every day, and they have the power now to influence their community, like members in their community, right? And these members in the community, they will spread the word and influence the nation. And once the nation is influenced, the entire world can be influenced after that. This is what is meant by the ripple effect. So moving on, we'll now discuss responses to the use of power. So different organizations have different leaders who use the 5 types of power discussed previously to influence others to achieve company goals. But we must note that there are 3 evident outcomes that will occur from the use of power. So these include compliance, resistance, and commitment. So let's take a look at what these responses mean in further detail. So the first is compliance. So this occurs when individuals in the workplace organization obeys the rules, laws, and directions of the person in authority, even though they really don't want to. So subordinates will be apathetic and show minimal effort to complete the tasks and objectives that their boss gave to them instead of, giving their full potential. So therefore, as a leader, if a leader, abuses his or her positional power, employees will resist even more. The second one is resistance. So this occurs when employees defy or disobey orders and intentionally avoid executing tasks. Therefore, leaders will have little positional power when the response is resistance. The third and final one is commitment. So commitment occurs when subordinates are willing to carry out tasks and follow their leader's perspective and point of view. So this type of response is usually caused by personal power, and this really helps to accomplish organizational goals. So let's take a look at this diagram. It illustrates the types of responses generated by position power and personal power. So on the left, we have compliance and resistance. So, and these two are usually caused by leaders who use positional power. And on the right, we have commitment, which is caused by leaders who use personal power. Commitment is usually favored instead of compliance and resistance when a leader is trying to encourage and promote change in the organization. So with change comes risk and uncertainty. Therefore, when subordinates commit, it helps to overcome resistance and fear. Next, we'll take a look at the role of dependency. So this occurs when an individual has influence over something that someone else wants or needs, and as a result, the person has more power. So therefore, we must understand that power is a function of dependence. So let me give you an example. So scouts go into different secondary schools in Trinidad to find the best football players. So these scouts will usually go to different football tournaments to recruit the best players to their club by making great deals and offers to them. Employees will feel less dependent on their supervisors when employment is low, and managers will be more dependent on their employees because they will be hard to replace. Whereas when employment is high, leaders have more power over employees because they are dependent on their job. This type of dependency usually affects leaders' positional power because they won't have the necessary authority to reward and punish their subordinates. Therefore, when leaders rely on employees, they must use their personal power because people would rather stay in a job where they trust and admire their boss, even when better opportunities arise. So moving on, we'll discuss control over resources. So dependency in the workplace is related to an individual's control over resources such as knowledge, time, financial support, expertise, and rewards. So people are more dependent, and as a result, leaders and organizations have more power when resources are high on three characteristics, right? Importance, scarcity, and non-substitutability. So let's explore these three characteristics in more depth. The first one is importance. So if the resources are essential to the organization, you will obtain greater power. So this means the more important the resources that you control, the more authority you will obtain. For example, if an individual in an organization is the only person who knows how to troubleshoot technology, an IT technician, it is important to work with that person because everyone has to use technology to complete their tasks and objectives. The second one is scarcity. So scarcity refers to how unique and rare resources are. They are more difficult to obtain. It is considered the more difficult it is to obtain, it is considered to be more valuable. So for example, individuals use persuasiveness to make an opportunity seem better because it is limited. The third one is non-substitutability. So this refers to leaders or employees with control over resources. With no alternatives, they have more power and authority. Next, we have the sources of leader power in organizations. Dependency and control over resources are the basis or foundation for several sources of leader power in the organization or workplace. And as I discussed before, the five types of power are obtained from position power or personal power. However, there are more sources of power, and the strategic contingency theories identifies power sources not connected to the specific person or position, but to the role the leader plays in that company, right? So this diagram displays the additional sources of power, which include interdepartmental dependency, control over information, organizational centrality, and coping with uncertainty. So we must also understand what strategic contingencies are. So strategic contingencies refers to a need for different tasks of a subunit in an organization on which tasks of other subunits create an effect. This contingency becomes strategic once other subunits start controlling more contingencies and becomes powerful in the organization. This is why factors like politics and power play an important role in the management of strategic contingencies. So now let's take a look and discuss in further detail these sources. So the first one is interdepartmental dependency. This refers to information, material, or resources going to departments in one direction. So this means that leaders who provide the resources will have more power than those in the departments that receive them. The second one is control over resources. Some employees in the workplace will obtain more information than others. So having control over resources entails having access to information and power over the resources as well as who it is given to. Therefore, this source of power is vital and very important to most leaders today. So some leaders in the workplace want to control how information is collected, distributed, and interpreted because they want to influence how decisions are made. So for instance, let's say Nyla is a manager at an organization and Josiah is an entry-level employee. Nyla will have more access to information than Josiah because of her rank in the company. So Nyla can choose to give out certain information to influence others and their decisions. However, if Josiah has access to exclusive information that Nyla needs, this way he will obtain more power because Nyla will be more dependent on him now. So therefore, as a leader, you can acquire influence and authority by helping out your organization and handling strategic contingencies. The third one is organizational centrality. So this refers to the role a leader or department plays in the primary activity of an organization. So centrality is associated with more power because it reflects the contribution made by the company. The last source of power is coping with uncertainty. So uncertainty is very common and I'm sure we've all heard about it, right? And this is a problem that most organizations face. So this occurs when there's a lack of information or knowledge necessary to accomplish goals or objectives in the organization. So therefore, as leaders, we must learn to cope and adapt to uncertainty, and in doing so, we will have more power and authority over others. I'll now pass you on to Josiah.
Good afternoon, everyone. So today I'll be touching on increasing power through political activity. Organizational politics refers to a variety of activities associated with the issue with the use of influence tactics to improve personal or organizational interest. It has been proven that individuals with political skills tend to do better in gaining more personal power. So, individuals and departments within organizations also engage in political activity. Political behavior can be either a positive or negative force. Uncertainty and conflict are natural in organizations. And politics is the mechanism for accomplishing things that can be handled purely through formal policies or position power. The approach, use of power, and politics to get things done is an important aspect of leadership. So leaders also use politics to increase their personal power. For example, one way leaders can increase their powers by seeking greater responsibilities, such as serving on committees or volunteering for difficult projects. This often enables them to make connections with powerful people in the organization and build their reputation among those people. When lower level leaders are perceived as having, as you say, in friends in higher places, their own power will increase. Another political approach is called impression management, which means people seek to control how others perceive them, often creating an impression of greater power as well as helping them gain more power. a whole new industry has, so it's basically saying of, perception is reality in most people's eyes. So another way, you could look at it's politics. So next slide, please. Okay, so I'll continue. So there can be several potential benefits of being involved in politics as a business owner, such as one would be influence over policy decisions. By engaging in politics, business owners can have a say in the development of policies that directly affect the industry or business. This can include advocating for regulations that are favorable to their business or lobbying against policies that could harm their business. So let's say like if I'm in the car industry, like I was in port cars and stuff, it would be in my best interest to befriend someone in a minister office who set in the so if you're importing a car, you have to pay a certain percentage in order to clear the car. So it would be in my best interest to have a friend who in the office who will be making use of the percentage I will have to pay to import the car. Right. So second one will be access to government resources. Political involvement can provide business owners with access to government resources such as, grants, subsidies, and contracts. Third point could be networking opportunities. Being involved in politics can also provide opportunities for business owners to network with other influential individuals, including politicians, government officials, and other business leaders. So if you know people in these high places, they could probably connect with someone who are in the same field with you, but in a different country. You could collaborate with them. You could figure something that you could network your business in that particular country. Our fourth point could be improve reputation. Political involvement can enhance a business owner's reputation and credibility, particularly if they are seen as advocates for important issues or causes. Like a lot of these CEOs of big companies, like they host charity drives for Christmas and stuff. Because people love people who does give back to the community. Other point could be improve understanding of the political landscape. Being involved in politics, business owners can gain a better understanding of the political landscape, including the policies and regulations that affect their businesses. This can help them make more informed decisions and adapt to changes in the regulatory environment. So I was just saying, if you have a friend, if it's a friend or a politician, you might know something can change before it changes, and you could be able to adapt to the situation before time compared to your competitors. However, it is important for business owners to be mindful of the political risks, potential risks, and challenges associated with political involvement, including the risk of alienating customers or stakeholders who may have different political views. It is also important to ensure that any political activities are conducted in a legal and ethical manner. So if it's important to know that if you're a stakeholder, if your customers or support a certain party and you came out boasting that you support this other party, it could create like a barrier between you and your stakeholders or customers. Next topic, please. Okay, so strategies for striving as a leader. One is think politically, manage conflict, keep your hunger in check. So thinking politically is a key step of acknowledging the political nature of leadership. Leaders cannot get anything done unless they create and nurture networks of people they can call on and work with to accomplish goals. That's basically what I'm talking about. At the start of any change campaign, good leaders line up their supporters, start working closely with their opponents, and develop tactics for influencing the unpermitted. I'm pretty sure you recognize this happens a lot, especially around election time. Second one will be manage conflict. Any tough issue is bound to be accompanied by conflict. While the natural tendency for most of us is to limit conflict, people learn and grow only when they encounter ideas that challenge their own experience and assumptions. As a leader, your duty is to work with different classes, ideas, opinions, emotions, and attitudes in a way that harnesses the energy of conflict but minimize its destructive potential. So conflict could be a good thing. It could turn out to be a positive thing. Once you minimize it from being destructive. So keep your hunger in check. Or you could say keep your ego in check. Everyone has hungers, expression of our normal human needs, but leaders are careful not to let their hungers disrupt their capacity for acting with wisdom and purpose. For example, a lust for power becomes an end in itself, distracting attention from organizational needs and goals. Inappropriate personal behavior damages trust, creates confusion, and destroys relationships. An inflated sense of self importance limits the capacity for self understanding and caring for relationship with others. See, if a self centered is not in that gonna make you appealing to others. Good leaders understand where their vulnerabilities are and work to keep them from taking charge of their lives. Next slide, please. Tactics for asserting leader influence. How leaders use their power to implement decisions, facilitate change, and pursue organizational goals. That is, leaders use power to influence others, which requires both skill and willingness. So, some tactics leaders use are rational persuasion, make people like you, develop allies, remember the principles of scarcity, formal authority of expertise and credibility. So, now we'll be looking at the rational persuasion. Next slide, please. So, rational persuasion is a simple tactic. It combines the request of the pressure approach with logical arguments supporting the request. With the rational persuasion tactic, leaders use logical arguments and factual evidence to show that a request is feasible and relevant to reach an important objective. Like rational persuasion is a type of persuasive communication that appeals to a person, reason, and logic. Like using facts, data, and logical arguments to convince them to make a certain action, to take a certain action, believe a certain idea, or change their behavior. Rational persuasion is often used in sales and marketing, as well as in public speaking and political campaigns. It is typically based on a careful analysis of the audience and their needs and interests, and it presents a logical and compelling case for why a particular course of action is the best case or best choice. Some of the key elements of rational persuasion include identifying the key benefits of a particular course of action, presenting evidence to support those benefits, anticipating and addressing potential objections, and using clear and concise language, to make the argument as easy to understand as possible. Ultimately, the goal of rational persuasion is to convince the audience that the proposed action or idea is in their best interest and that they should take action accordingly. So the second one will be next slide, please. Be a humble and likable person. Right. So as a leader, when your staff and or followers actually like you, everyone gets along better, and it's easier to achieve objectives for the company. So we all know it's easier to say yes to someone we like rather than someone who we do not like. Like for example, in the book on influence tells the story about an American working in Saudi Arabia who learned that getting information or action from government offices was easy. What he used to do was he drop by, drink tea, and chat for a while. So those are typical cultural values in Saudi Arabia. Put great emphasis on personal relationships because people in our cultures respond to friendliness and consideration. When a leader shows concern for others, demonstrates trust and respect, and treats people fairly, people are more likely to want to help and support the leader by doing what he or she asks. So, in addition, most people will like a leader who makes them feel good about themselves. Leaders never underestimate the importance of praise. Like complimenting your employees when they did a good job. So, next slide, please, which should be develop allies. Allies lead with empathy and build relationships based on trust, consistency, and accountability. They listen, show compassion, and endeavor to walk in other people's shoes, meeting people where they are. Allies lead with empathy and build relationships based on trust, consistency, and accountability. So there's nothing better than working in a positive atmosphere. Employees are more productive, creative, and collaborative. They feel they can be both professional and authentic. You can be yourself. Even when work becomes stressful, needless tension arising from strange relationships isn't added. The organizations builds a reputation as a forward-thinking place to work, attracting and retaining a high-performing workplace that more accurately reflects the community it serves. No, workplace integrity isn't about avoiding litigations or grievances. It is about lofty slogans that do not match everyday reality. It's about building cultures of respect and trust. Allies are key to that success. They act without any expectations of praise or proof. Allies lead with humility. They are not heroes, they are helpers. So, Kalisa, now touch on scarcity, but we'll be going back it for a moment. Next slide, please. It's scarcity, yeah. So, scarcity is important for understanding how goods and services are valued. Things that are scarce, like gold, diamonds, or certain kinds of knowledge, are more valuable for being scarce because sellers of these goods and services can set higher prices. So, this principle means that people usually want more of what they can't have. When things are less available, they become more desirable, like basic psychology. For example, an interesting study on the purchase decisions of wholesale beef buyers found that buyers more than doubled their orders when they were told that because of weather conditions, there was likely to be scarcity of foreign beef in the near future. Intru- Though their orders increased by 600%, when they were informed that no one else had the information yet, retailers often use this principle by sending advance notice of sales to credit card holders, making them feel they are getting information that the general shopping public doesn't have. Leaders can learn to frame their requests or orders in such a way as to highlight the unique benefits and exclusive information being provided. One approach is to selectively release information that is not broadly available and that supports the leader's ideas or proposals. Letting people know they are getting a sneak peek at information captures their interest and make them more likely to support the leader's position. So next slide, please. Extend formal, display your authority with expertise and credibility. Show that you actually know what you are talking about by displaying your expertise and credibility within your field. Leading by example is more effective than bossing people around and telling them what to do. So, in order to influence others, they must trust you and your ability to do a good job. This means showing that you have done your research, know the facts, and understand the impact of your ideas and actions will have. Demonstrating your credibility and excellence will make people want to work with you. In addition, it's important to show that you understand your organizations as a whole, not just your part of it. Like, especially when working with others who work in different parts of the organization. For example, if you have a superior, but you understand the job better than they do, it will be hard for you to respect them or look at them as a superior. That's like basic how our brain operates, no matter how hard you try. So next slide, please. Ethical consideration in using power in politics. Leadership is the ability to get people to do what they don't want to do and like it. Leadership is an opportunity to use power and influence to accomplish important organizational goals, but power can also be abused. So, personalized leaders are typically selfish, impulsive, and exercise power from their own self-centered needs and interests rather than the good for the organization. Like, socialized leaders exercise power in service of higher goals that will benefit others and the organization as a whole. So, one specific area in which the unethical use of power is increasing concern for organizations is, sexual harassment. People in organizations depends on one another and especially on leaders for many resources, including formation, cooperation. So when access to resources seems to depend on granting sexual favors or putting up with sexual, intimidating, or threatening comments, the person in the dependent position is being personally violated. So that's why in most companies, relationship work. Oh my God. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, we can you.
That's over here again.
Oh, come on. It's no, so it's disconnected now. Okay. So that's why most companies relationships with a coworker is forbidden and in most cases a fireable offense. So We tend to hear a lot of these stories in the music and film industry, like established directors taking advantage of new actresses looking for their first big break in the industry. One of the most recent famous cases of this is the Bill Cosby situation. I'm not sure if you guys watch sports and stuff, but in the NBA, I think recently it had a situation with a NBA coach and one of his staff members was involved, which is against the company rules, and result in they both being fired. So, partially in response to pressures from the courts, many organizations are developing policies and procedures that protect individuals from sexual harassment on the job and offer mechanisms for reporting complaints. Sexual assault is not just unethical, it is illegal and it is a clear abuse of power. However, there are many other situations in organizations that are not a clear cut, and leaders may sometimes have difficulty distinguishing ethical from, from unethical uses of power and politics. First and foremost, is the question of whether the action is motivated by self interest or is it consistent with organization goals. For example, right, one ethnic company has a rule that an employee can be terminated for a political act that is in the individual's own self interest rather than in the interest of the company or that harms another person in the organization. So, once a leader answers this primary question, there are several other questions that can help determine whether a potential influence action is ethical, including whether it respects the rights of individuals and groups affected by it, whether it meets the standards of fairness. You know, if a leader answers these questions, honestly, they can serve as a guide to whether an intended act is ethical. So, in the complex world of organizations, there will always be situations that are difficult to interpret. Most important points is for leaders to be aware of the ethical responsibilities of having and take care to use the power to help rather than to harm others. Like they say, with great power comes great responsibility. Leaders should think not in terms of getting their own way, but rather in terms of building long-term productive relationships that can achieve goals and benefit the entire organization. Okay, so next slide, please. So, a question for you: how does control over information give power to a person? Have you ever used control over information to influence a decision with friends or coworkers? If so, can you please explain? So, it
When
doesn't.
I think about
I feel
control over
listening.
information and how it gives power to a person, I don't know, I just think about somewhat of blackmail. I don't know, because if you have so much power and you could withhold that information, then I just think that that is not something right to do, and I wouldn't do that to my friends or
Yeah, I
co-workers.
agree. I agree to that because sometimes people um position, they think that they think that they are have the power. They have all of an autonomy to do whatever they want to do. And sometimes you as an individual might be more informed or more knowledgeable in an area. And only because they have the power, they make you feel that you have to stay in this particular position until they say that you have to, rise or be promoted. So sometimes that's what happens in organizations. They may not have the information, but they have the power in a particular managerial position. So I agree. I agree in that sense.
Okay, so you also think have any positive way that you can use control information? I was trying to think of some, but I couldn't have came up with them anyways. I only came up with what you just basically said now. The negative side to it. Any others? Okay, so I'll pass you on to Felicia.
No, let me add this part. I looked at a show, I think it's a judge show, and sometimes the person, he had the power to make the decision. And even though the persons and they were not really in line, he still tried to help them to refocus what they were doing. So sometimes, even though he had the power to send them to prison and such like, he used another strategy in order to help them to, make better choices. So to me, that is a positive something.
Okay, that's a good one. I didn't think of that. Thank you for your feedback.
Just to add to that, something like community service or something like that, instead of sending them to the jail time. And I believe that's what she trying to say.
Okay.
And sometimes that's
So
a pay a
now,
fine.
pardon me?
She was saying that sometimes they would have to pay a fine instead of doing the prison time.
Time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, hi again, everyone, and I'll be doing the conclusion and basically just summarizing what my group members and I discussed today, just to ensure that everyone fully understands what the chapter really entails. Okay, so the chapter explored how leaders use power, influence, and political actions to accomplish organizational goals, right? So we discussed the two leadership styles, which are transformational and charismatic. So in which leaders depend on their personal characteristics or traits as a source of power. So leaders use the 5 types of power, which I discussed, which are legitimate, reward, expert, reference, and coercive, which are really associated with a leader's position and personal qualities like to influence people and accomplish goals. We also explored the 3 distinct outcomes that may result from the use of power, which are compliance, resistance, and commitment. So in addition, we say that power is a function of dependence, right? And dependence is better for resources that are important, scarce, and have no available alternatives. So leaders also obtain power by contributing to the organization's goals through interdepartmental dependencies, centrality, control over information, and coping with uncertainty. Power is also gained and exercised through political activities because leaders use several influential tactics, as my group member Josiah just discussed. So the 7 principles for asserting leader influence are rational persuasion, liking and friendliness, reciprocity, developing allies, direct appeal, scarcity, and formal authority. So with that being said, it is important for leaders to use power and politics, listen carefully, ethically, and responsibly for the success of the organization, right? So I just want you all to understand everything that we discussed, and on behalf of my group members and I, we would like to thank you for your time and consideration.
So are there any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, I'm going to stop the recording.